Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Ellensburg, Washington. How's everybody doing tonight? Hello, Netherlands. The local time here in Washington State is about 5:48 p.m. and we will begin our program on the Yakima River Canyon at the top of the hour at 6 p.m. We always start these a little early to test out a couple things and say hi to everybody. Hello, Jason from Wenatchee. Wales, hello. I'm always asking about loud and clear. Are we doing okay stream-wise? Looks like we are. The text is frontwards, I assume. Readable, otherwise you'll let me know. Hello, New Hampshire, Ontario, Canada. Stream is fine. Nice. I've meant to do this before, but I think I'll do it right now. Do we have kids watching right now? I'd like to say hi to you. So if you're under the age of 15 and your parents wants to type in for you, or you can type in for you. Evelyn, age 7, hello. Yeah, if I could get your age as well, not to be too nosy about it, but Avadia, age 9. I'm sorry about pronouncing that name incorrectly. Hello. Acadia, well, there it is, age 9. It's wonderful to have people of all ages, and especially kids, who are trying to keep things going. Gavin, age 11. Miles, age 9. Terrific to see you all. Now, if you're an adult right now and you're feeling left out, I'm sorry. Dakota and Maddie, age 7 and 5. Cliff, age 66. Good Lord. Jeff from Vinman's Bakery. All right. Well, I'll look at a few more of these, see if we have any other children here. I'm glad we're all here together. Six years old, Zeke Rat. Okay. Wonderful. All right, I got a couple of things up my sleeve tonight, as per usual. I like to keep it fresh for you and for me. First of all, let me get the drink. Down to the last bottle here. We've been enjoying these bottles sent to us from Livermore, California. So this episode of Nick from Home brought to you by Cedar Mountain Winery. A 2017 Cabernet Sauvignon from the Thatcher Bay Vineyard in Livermore Valley, California. Thank you so much for your gift. We've enjoyed every bottle. And by we, I mean mostly my wife, but I've gotten an opportunity to get a couple of drops here and there, and this one's mine. As you can see, it's another flawless evening here in Ellensburg. I don't know what the weather's like where you are, and we know this won't last forever, but boy, these nights are magical. It's almost like a movie set where the light is just right and it's dead calm, and it's A lot of people out tonight. I don't hear anybody right now, but I suppose we'll have some voices in the background. We're in a walking neighborhood, and that reminds me, one of the things I have up my sleeve tonight. Let me show you something. So if you're a regular of our live streams by now, you know that 2 different times I grabbed the phone and walked up to an overlook in my neighborhood that looks over the valley and looks towards Mount Stewart and where the Ellensburg blue agates are located. And I got an email from a viewer. I'm sorry, I can't remember your name. I couldn't find that email. Maybe it wasn't even an email. Maybe you texted me or something. I don't know how you contacted me, but you said, look, you need an Osmo Mobile 3. And I'm like, okay. So he just sent me the link, and I didn't even do any research. I just hit the link and bought the thing. And those that know, it's kind of like a selfie stick, but it's not really. Let me show you. So this is it in its entirety. The Osmo whatever, the DJI Osmo. I don't even know what you call this thing. I'm sure you know. But basically the camera goes in here and you power this thing on, and as you walk, this is kind of a stabilizer for the video camera in the iPhone that I'm talking into right now. So you know that I'm 57 years old. So it took me 3 separate days, an hour each time, to even figure out how to turn the frickin' thing on, how to initiate it, how to get the Bluetooth working. I mean, that stuff doesn't come naturally to me. So anyway, this morning I actually got it working. I didn't live stream, of course, but I shot some video and I walked up to the overlook and it looked really nice. And so at the end of tonight, regardless of how much over time we are, if you want to stick around, I think I'll even do the toast and we'll sign off. And after the toast, if you still want to stick around, it's going to take me a few minutes to get this thing fired up. And it's like a 50-50 chance it'll even work. But if it works, and it stays beautiful like this, we'll be able to look to the south and see the Yakima River Canyon, our topic tonight, to see Meanders Ridge, our topic tonight, and to see off to the north and see the Stewart Range and the Thorpe Moraine, and many of the things we've been talking about we can see from this neighborhood. So I need to come up with a pet name for this thing because I don't really know what to call it. That's maybe your job. So that's one thing I have up my sleeve. I got one more. Perfect weather, perfect weather. Before I forget, I want to show you that I'm not going to see you tomorrow night, but I will be seeing you, if you're interested, Saturday morning at 9 o'clock Pacific time, Sunday morning Pacific time, and those are our topics. Especially this show might be extra interesting because I'm going to read a bunch of hate mail, basically negative comments on some of our YouTube programs, which are really entertaining. So not only will we talk about columnar basalt, but we'll talk about different views of a scientist. So I don't know exactly how I'm going to do it, but that's the plan. It's fun. I'm a big boy. We're still doing okay. We got 3 minutes. I'm going to try one more time. Everything's looking okay. sounding okay. We're going to go in the cozy fort again. That seemed to work pretty well last night. I've got a much bigger blanket so we can get more people into the cozy fort. God, yeah. Got all this foam and everything behind the camera. I don't even need it, man. It's like perfect. There's two very young kids next door, and it can't be a coincidence. So they know, I guess they remembered that I was doing this every night at 6 o'clock. So they're never in the backyard at 6 o'clock. So I should go over and bring them some cookies or something, because those little girls should be outside right now. It's perfect, but they're not over there. Okay. The other surprise I have, we'll have to, I'll spring it on you when we're doing this for real. 90 seconds, let me get my thoughts together and we'll go for it. Actually, can you see the bottom of can you see the word Yakima? Can you see the bottom of the chalkboard right now? Barely. Now? Okay, good, thanks. Well, a pleasant good evening to all of you. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Nick Zentner. I teach at the college here in Ellensburg, Washington. And our topic tonight on this live stream number whatever is the Yakima River Canyon. And if you're viewing this from a long way away from Washington State, I'm hoping this can still have some interest to you, because we're going to talk about kind of problem solving a little bit, trying to use some logic. And I'm going to try something new tonight, and before I forget it, I want to say it right now so I don't forget. I'd like, in just a few minutes, to stop and present a study question. And I'm thinking primarily of kids, but I think I'm talking about people of all ages. So I'm literally going to stop what I'm doing. I'm going to keep the live stream going, of course, but I'm going to present this study question, and I'm going to shut up, and I'm going to read your thoughts. I won't do this for too long. I don't want to lose all the momentum. But I need to ask one thing, and that is, if you are a fan of geology and you know about the Yakima River Canyon and you basically know the answer immediately for our study question, would you do me a favor? And would you keep your mouth shut? Would you not type in the answer? Just for a few minutes. And we'll let folks who are thinking about this for the first time, we'll see if this study question little session works or not. It may be a total disaster. But the hope is the people that know the answer, keep quiet. We try to, with everybody else, get everybody's kind of got their vote in on what they think the answer might be. Then we will reveal it, and then we'll continue on our merry way. Of course, we'll do the live Q&A at the end about all things related to the Yakima River Canyon. Is that clear? Is that the plan? It's going to come pretty soon, actually. It's not going to be like halfway through or at the end. It's going to be coming in the next few minutes. But to properly get you ready for tonight's study question, where are we talking? Well, this is a blackboard here, isn't it? And up here in the corner is Snoqualmie Pass. That was our topic last night. Were you with us? We had an equally beautiful night last night. And up at Snoqualmie Pass, which is at the crest of the Cascade Mountains, we had a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. The Yakima Valley Glacier, Marble and Denny Mountain, the Sandstone of Guy Peak. What else? A bunch of other stuff that we were discussing. But tonight I mentioned Snoqualmie Pass because that is the start. That is the source of the Yakima River. The Yakima River flows away from Snoqualmie Pass. And so basically there are a bunch of streams that are coming off of the east flanks of the high Cascades, and that water is going into the Yakima River. And this yellow line is the Yakima River. Look, it comes almost to my backyard. It comes right into our valley, the Kittitas Valley. And then the Yakima River hangs a right. In other words, it turns south. It doesn't continue to the east. And it starts going straight south, but it doesn't really go straight south, does it? It does this strange pattern. Almost looks like ribbon candy. I'm dating myself again. I used to visit my Grandma Helen's house, and she always had some candy dishes. And I would sit there in my nice little Easter outfit, and I would be eyeballing that ribbon candy until I was given the nod that I could actually put a little ribbon candy in my mouth. I had a softness for the sweets even back then. So we have this ribbon candy look of the Yakima River, and that's our topic tonight. Where this Yakima River is doing this ribbon candy swinging back and forth, that's where the canyon is, the Yakima River Canyon, right here. And then the river leaves the canyon, goes right next to a town called Yakima, Washington, and the Yakima River continues down to the south. Yeah, I'll show you that map in just a second. What are these white things? Those are ridges. Each of these white lines, these fat white lines, is a ridge. So Ellensburg, my town, sits in a valley called the Kittitas Valley, and there is a ridge to the north of town, part of the Wenatchee Mountains. There's a ridge to the south of town, which I'm looking at right behind you right now. That's Menashtash Ridge. There's another ridge, Umtanum Ridge. There's another ridge, Sela Butte Ridge, and there's a dozen more. Below this blackboard, there's Yakima Ridge, Autanum Ridge, Horse Heaven Hills, Toppenish Ridge, Columbia Hills Ridge. In other words, south central Washington is just chock full of these ridges that are parallel to each other. I'm almost to my study question right off the bat. In fact, no, I'll give you a little bit more. Each of these ridges is 1,000 feet high. And there's a popular hiking trail in our valley where you drive typically to the base of Menashtash Ridge. You drive right over here, and you park the car, and you get out, and you start hiking up. And you hike about 1,000 feet from the base of Menashtash Ridge to the top. And each of these ridges is about 1,000 feet, more or less, from the bottom to the top. So 1,000 feet's a fair amount, isn't it? Like, I'm from Wisconsin. There weren't any ridges like that. So these are significant ridges that are all parallel to each other, and they're part of something I don't want to tell you yet. Okay? So there are really very few of these ridges to the north of Wenatchee Mountains, and these ridges die out pretty significantly once we get off to the east of the chalkboard. And we lose the ridges over here. So we just have these obvious ridges between Ellensburg and the state of Oregon. And that's really our topic. But we're using the Yakima River Canyon to try to study this. Okay. Do you remember the rules? I hope you do. Study question. If you know the answer, zip your lip for just a little bit. Okay? Everybody else who's never thought about the Yakima Canyon, can you predict what question I'm going to ask right now? Maybe you're already wondering it yourself. Here's my question. Here's our study question. Why did this Yakima River flow into our valley and then turn right and decide to plow right through these three ridges? Why would a river go right at a ridge and punch right through it? And why is it so loopy? Why does it from the air look like ribbon candy right where it's going through those ridges? So I'm basically asking, why did the Yakima River Canyon form? But I'm being more specific, and I'm wondering why the river went through the ridges. And I have to add one more thing. I'm not going to your answers yet. If you've already typed your answer, way to go, but you might have to type it again in just a second. I'm not ready to see your answers. And your answer, if you're a student of the study question, needs to be in uppercase. I'm not ready yet. The last thing I have to say is, are we sure that the ridges were here before the river? Like when we wrote this video program that we did a while back, I actually did a little man on the street interview with people in town. People that didn't think about geology at all, just random people on the street. I said, well, why do you think the Yakima River Canyon? Everybody just assumed that the ridge was there and then the river decided to bust through. But I don't know if we can assume that. Okay, I feel like you know what? No, I'm going to do one more thing. I know you're frustrated with me right now. You've already got the answer and you're fine, but I'm actually sprinkling little hints in. So here is my study question. For real this time. Who is older? Was the Yakima River here before the ridges? Or are the ridges older? Were the ridges here first and then the river busted through? And how would you figure that out? Okay, kids, adults, doesn't matter your age. I'm going to try to read just as they scroll through. The river is older. The river is older. The river first and then the ridges. The river is older. The ridges came after the river. Okay, you're all kind of saying the same thing right now. I'm kind of waiting for a couple kids in here. Yeah, we're going to do a little Native American stuff in just a second. The ridges are older. The river was first. The river was there first. Okay, this is kind of working. Thank you for participating. I've got one more thing where the people that know the answer is going to keep their mouth shut. Why do you have your vote? In other words, what evidence do you have that the river is older? Or what evidence do you have? What would you look for as a geologist to prove that the ridges were there first? I'm asking why now. Law of superposition. We might have to talk about that. Some of us are not playing the game according to the rules. The river couldn't run uphill to erode the path. The windy path of the river. Meanders question mark. Stage 4 of a river. So some of you have okay. So our game is not really working because most of you have seen a prior video and you're kind of admitting that. So we tried it. We tried it. Okay. Okay, let me reveal the answer. I think most of you have it either by logic or by seeing something else. Now, I'm going to fumble with my laptop, not to go in the cozy fort right away, but to read to you something that I found online. I have an intense interest in Native American history. And I'm not Native American. Can you tell? And so I rarely feel appropriate to share a Native American legend or a story because they aren't my stories. And there's probably a good chance I'm screwing it up. And that's not positive. But I am going to share a little bit of Native American legend with you about the Yakima River Canyon to give you a feeling for what they were observing and what they were thinking. Thousands of years of history of people thinking about geology long before white folks showed up. And part of the reason I'm feeling a little bit more bold about sharing Native American stuff is I have made some connections now with Native Americans in Central Washington. Randy Lewis in particular lives in Wenatchee. He's about 10 years older than I am, and he is an amazing person, an amazing storyteller, and he knows his stuff. And through Randy and some kind of, developing some relationships with others up in Colville, up at Omak, etc., I'm learning more and more directly from Native Americans in Washington, and I'm hoping to continue that. So I just say that because I realize the sensitivity of the issues, but my main goal is to continue to work with folks who know these stories well, and my part could be possibly to cast a wider net for appreciation at the least for some of this amazing storytelling and thinking about our areas. So basically what I'm saying is, take your pick. 7,000 years ago, people were sitting here in Kittitas Valley and looking at this river canyon and wondering how they could answer it. I'm actually going to read this to you as you can kind of look at this here. I think this will work. I'm going to do this quickly. This is a story from Native Americans locally about the creation of the Yakima River Canyon. As you hear this few paragraphs, ask yourself if they thought the river was older than the ridges or vice versa. Now, Wishpush the monster beaver lived in the beautiful Lake Cle Elum, which was full of fish. Every day, the animal people would come to the lake wanting to catch some fish, but Wishpush, the giant beaver, drove them away with many threats and great splashing. If they refused to leave, Wishpush would kill the animal people by dragging them deep into the lake so that they drowned. This is an intense story now. Coyote was very upset at Wishpush for the way he treated the animal people. Coyote decided that he would kill the monster beaver, and so he went to Lake Cle Elum with his spear tied to his wrist and started to fish. As soon as Wishpush saw this upstart person invading his territory, the giant beaver attacked Coyote, threw the spear, and it pierced the beaver. Immediately, Wishpush dove to the bottom of the lake, dragging Coyote with him. Well, Coyote and Wishpush wrestled and tugged and fought each other at the bottom of the lake until the sides gave way and all the water rushed out, pouring over the mountain ridges and through the canyons until it collected in the Kittitas Valley. This is a fight now between two giant animals in this lake, according to Native American stories of this area. Coyote and Wishpush burst forth into the new lake, shouting and wrestling and fighting each other with renewed vigor until the second lake gave way and the water rushed out, joining in with the water of several rivers to form a massive lake at Toppenish. So to explain, this is me talking now, to explain the ribbon candy, the local people were visualizing a terrible fight between these two giant animals, and they were busting through these ridges as that fight continued and drained a temporary lake that was behind them, forming the canyon. I'll read one more paragraph. Wishpush, the monster beaver, would not give up the fight. He bit and clawed at Coyote and tried to drown him in the massive lake. Coyote fought back fiercely, and at last a massive lake gave way. Water roared down into the meeting place of the Columbia. So now they're actually down at the floor below the chalkboard. So the entire stretch of the Yakima River has many curves like this, and the first geologists of the area who happened to be the first people of the area, really did some interesting critical thinking. We now view it differently. We now have scientific measurements, not to discredit that wonderful thinking that was done before us, but we now have GPS receivers, and we now have ages of the bedrock layers that are in these ridges. And we have observations of other rivers around the world. And using logic and new techniques that we have from our travels around the world, us now, in the last 100 years, have used logic and reason to argue the other way. And the way we view it as geologists today is the river was here first when the area was flat. And then these ridges started to grow on opposite sides of the river canyon. Now that sounds like a Native American legend, doesn't it? The ridges grow? That's what we see. And we see Menashtash Ridge and Umtanum Ridge and South Sela Butte Ridge continuing to grow today, fractions of millimeters annually, but it's still growing due to plate tectonics, which was not known 5,000 years ago. So let's expand on our view of forming the Yakima River Canyon. Are you still with me? I just stated that we firmly have evidence now that the Yakima River is far older than these ridges. Okay, well, how old is the Yakima River? Well, the Yakima River is coming from the Cascades, so we're basically saying, when did the Cascades start to lift? And we have evidence that the Cascade volcano started to grow 40 million years ago. So if you want one number, which is tough to prove precisely, but I think the concept works, the Cascade Mountains, the source of these rivers, including the Yakima River's been flowing for 40 million years. But you'll see that these ridges are not 40 million years old, and I want to show you the evidence for that. He goes to the whiteboard. So, what do we see that we recognize on this whiteboard? Well, here's Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. What else do we notice? Well, here's the Yakima River. So here's the Cascades in black. I'm zooming out, aren't I? I'm getting further up in space to look down. Here's our friend in blue, the Yakima River, doing the ribbon candy thing, and then continuing south to Tri-Cities. That's where I ended the Native American story. They continue, by the way, with their story between the two giant animals all the way through the Columbia River Gorge, but I left that part out. And then this is, of course, the Columbia River here. So the Yakima River is entering into the Columbia River at Tri-Cities. What else do I have on this whiteboard? I've got something in red. What is that? Well, that should look familiar to some of you if you've been with us a long time. We haven't been talking about it much recently, but 16 million years ago, there were giant fissures, cracks that formed. Again, this sounds like a Native American story. Giant cracks formed 16 million years ago, and flowing away from those giant cracks is orange lava, the flood basalts, the German chocolate cake, where in places, this pile of giant lavas is 3 miles thick. Do you need an image? This is from Cindy Shaw. I actually got an email from Cindy Shaw this afternoon. I haven't even read it yet, but I'm excited to read it. And there's our incredible pile of basalt lava layers, and that is significant for a couple of reasons. The first reason is I'm making sure that we know that we have the German chocolate cake and these flood basalts is that the walls of this Yakima River Canyon are nothing but basalt lavas. It's a river canyon in the German chocolate cake. Not the entire thickness of the German chocolate cake, but a significant portion of it. She doesn't show that, does she? Not really. She shows just a little bit of the Yakima River getting into a little bit of the lava, but I can be more specific than that. The second reason I'm showing you the German chocolate cake is that what are these things in green? What's in green? The ridges. So each of these is a green line on this whiteboard. And please notice how many more of these ridges we have. And I rattled off some of those names to you earlier. But what do you notice about those green ridges? Do they continue across the entire map? They do not. What observation can you make about the ridges in relationship to, let's say, the German chocolate cake? That's right. We only really have the ridges when we're in the cake. As soon as we get out of the giant lavas, we lose the ridges. So there's a connection between the formation of these ridges and the strength and the thickness and the freakish nature of these giant lava flows that flooded eastern Washington 16 million years ago. I didn't really make that observation, or I went on a field trip about, 15 years ago, and the main guy, Steve Rydell, who was leading the trip, who did a lot of work on these Yakima folds that we're talking about right now, made that point over and over again, like, wow, how did I not notice that before? Because it's true, once you get further west, I just didn't stop drawing these, they literally go away. They kind of disappear into the Cascades, and they're mainly going away because we are leaving the German chocolate cake. So more coming on that in just a second. But the other main thing I'd like to do with you, and then we can kind of go to some specific things within the canyon, is to make sure you see the sequence. What was the answer to our study question? The answer, according to us as geologists in the 21st century and even the 20th century, is that the Yakima River was there before the ridges. Our main logic there is that you can only develop meandering streams like this. That's what this is called in geology. A curvy river with a bunch of lazy curves on a map is called a meandering river system. And we think, in fact, I can say it, we know that meandering rivers can only develop meanders if an area is flat, like this top picture here. Forget about the arrows. We just have a sunny day and it's flat, and I'm saying Central Washington was flat as recently as 12 million years ago. You know what? I need to... I hate to ruin my map, but I'm going to, because I need to show you, and we're going to go in the Cozy Fort in just a second, and Tom Foster has a little animation that will help us, but let me add a little bit to it here. Okay? So if you go back east, like my wife and I had a little spring break trip planned to go stay in the Garden District of New Orleans and had a little Airbnb and the whole thing, and like you, we couldn't travel. So, like you, we had to cancel all those plans. Airbnb is great, man. They just give you the refund right away. And Alaska Airlines. This episode brought to you by Alaska Airlines. You gotta love it. Alaska Airlines was also very easy to work with. They didn't give you your money back, but they gave you a credit or whatever, put it in your little bank. Anyway, if we had gone to the New Orleans, I would have bored Liz with this story, even though she's heard it a million times. That rivers develop curves, they develop meanders as they age. If you have a flat area, like back in Louisiana or Tennessee, or take your pick, back there in the Mississippi. So looking down on a river, from studying rivers flowing around the world, looking down now from heaven, we know that originally rivers are pretty straight. And then due to all sorts of fluid hydraulics inside of a river channel, that river, as it ages, starts to get slightly curvy. Okay, now if we get a little bit of curviness to it, have you ever rafted? Let me make a channel that's wider. Have you ever been in a whitewater raft or any kind of thing that's narrow where you're moving kind of fast and you're approaching a corner, I think you know where I'm headed. If you're trying to maintain maximum velocity in this river or on this speedway or whatever, this yellow line is representing where the fastest water is flowing. And the fastest water is hugging the outside of this curve and the outside of this curve and the outside of this curve. Well, have you ever thought about that? Do you know what a cut bank is? So if we keep having the fastest water on the outside of this curve and the outside of this curve, and we wait a few hundred years, aren't we going to continue to cut in to the outside, cut into the outside, cut into the outside? The answer is yes, by the way. And aren't we going to drop a bunch of stuff on the inside, drop a bunch of rocks on the inside, drop a bunch of rocks on the inside? Again, people raft regularly, especially beautiful hot summer days with a bunch of beer and beautiful people and hardly any clothes. And they're rafting on the Yakima River. And occasionally you pull out of the river on these point bars, on these places where there's a bunch of river rocks on the inside of the river channel. That's where the water is the slowest. Do you see what I'm doing, however? I'm saying that as time goes by, we keep exaggerating the outsides of the curves. And so the river gets more and more windy, but the key is you have to have a flat piece of real estate to do this. To go through these different stages of river development, you need to have a flat area. You need to allow that live snake to slither its way laterally due to this process I was just describing. And what's the last stage of this? Well, the last stage, I'm running out of room, is we get so ribbon candy-y that the river is so curvy that it cuts itself off. And eventually, the river goes straight again. And we're left with all of these former meanders that now have standing water in them. We call them oxbow lakes today. So if you're on Google Earth right now, flying around, you're an overachiever, you can do 7 things at once, you're also cooking supper at the same time, you can see all these oxbow lakes in the Mississippi River Channel. And my point is, we were doing that here. The Yakima River, when the area was flat, was doing that meandering thing. You can't see it here, but we need the area to be flat. What are these layers? Those are the German chocolate cake layers, the giant lava flows. So how are we going to make the canyon? Well, the river's clearly here first. It's right by that person 16 million years ago. Stupid. But then if we start squeezing the crust, sound familiar? If we start squeezing the crust from the north and from the south, the most simplest Geology 101-ish way to discuss the formation of the Yakima River Canyon is to say each ridge, that's what an R is, each valley, that's what the V is a result of folding the German chocolate cake, from squeezing the German chocolate cake. And our river becomes trapped. In geology, we call it an entrenched meander. We have meanders, and they are entrenched. In other words, they're not allowed to continue on to the next phase of squiggling like a live snake because the area is no longer flat. In fact, the area is uplifting. And if you uplift, especially where the ridges are, all of the energy's river is going down as opposed to going laterally. I've got this here, so I'm going to finish out. This is a more advanced way to discuss these ridges. So notice that I have ridges in both pictures. This is the more, I'm not flipping you off, this is the more simple way to do it, but this is a little bit more accurate way to do it. Notice what's different with the bottom versus the middle. What do you see here? Well, first of all, you don't see two arrows colliding. You just see a big arrow coming from the south, and I had the word stop here. I've already erased it with my fingerprints here by accident. Does this make sense to you? We're still squeezing the German chocolate cake, but we're only squeezing from the south, and there's no squeezing coming from the north. Why? You know the answer. Patrick, Evelyn, you know the answer. Phoenix, you know the answer. Acadia, you know the answer. How many times have we looked at this? These black lines are the faults of the Yakima Fold and Thrust Belt. Our river canyon and our uplifting ridges, which are basically just knuckles that are growing, is a result of this clockwise rotation. And yes, you've heard me say it many times now. Northern California, Western Oregon, Western Washington are rotating aggressively, but Canada is not. There's a big old stop sign up there. And so it's this motion that has formed these ridges. And I'm looking at two ridges right there behind you. And the only reason those ridges are there, 1,000 feet high, is this clockwise rotation. Is Northern California getting closer and closer to Canada, and we're getting squeezed in between. And what's the net result? The Yakima River Canyon. Can you tell I've given this talk a few times? It's right here, the Yakima Canyon. I didn't have to think at all tonight. I just had some wine and started hitting live, and we go. This one's easy for me. I've talked about it a million times. It's still fun to talk about. Hope you're enjoying it. And I'm sure you have some questions tied to this. But I guess the last thing before we go in the cozy fort is to show you that it's not really just a simple squeezing. It's California inching closer and closer to Canada, number one. But also notice there's a little bit more complex geometry here. And I'm afraid it's bad news for us. In addition to this just kind of cute folding, these are called anticlines, these are called synclines, no big whoop. Notice we now realize that the anticlines are rooted in a reverse fault. Each ridge has a major reverse fault. In fact, it's a low angle reverse fault. In other words, it's a fault that is close to being flat as opposed to a steep fault. It's a fault that's less than 45 degrees away from horizontal. So we call these thrust faults. So what you're looking at here is our most accurate view of how these ridges have grown through time. Yes, they've knuckled, but they've also broken on these thrust faults. And the bad news is we're still squeezing. And the bad news is we've had earthquakes on these faults. 1872, magnitude 7.4, up by north of Wenatchee in Spencer Canyon. One of these guys. Base of Toppenish Ridge. Base of Menashtash Ridge. There's been some recent geologic studies on those thrust faults to at least try to start to get a feeling for how active they are and how worried we should be. But this is new information that we haven't yet totally gotten together. I'm still on a roll here. Before we go to the cozy fort, which I guess will be a nice kind of like summary to our discussion as opposed to early. Let's go to Marley's book one more time. Marley Miller, University of Oregon, she has just put out a couple years ago the second edition of Roadside Geology of Washington, far superior to the first one, no offense. And I just want to give you a taste of this. If you have the book, it's on 272. She's so good at making maps. So I'm going to push in as hard as I can here. So each line is a different reverse fault, or a thrust fault, in other words. And the colors are talking about which faults have been more active recently. I'm trying to read backwards into this phone now. You can read it better than I, but I think the red faults, like at Toppenish Ridge, for instance, there's evidence that there was an earthquake on the Toppenish Ridge fault in the last, what is that, 11,000 years? So in other words, they're all quite active, but we haven't done nearly the amount of, we need to trench many more of these faults and get more dates on that stuff. I bookmarked another, what's Cindy's thing? Oh yeah. Marley also, right at the end of her book, like right before she goes to the glossary, she has a nice little, I love her maps. They're just enough detail to be interesting, but broad enough to tell a decent story. So she's made her little custom geologic map of the Yakima River Canyon. Which reminds me then, if you're a fan of old publications like I am, I doubt you can find this in paper form, but maybe you can find it as a PDF. Newell Campbell taught for a long time at the two-year college in Yakima and also did a lot with oil and natural gas companies. And these are these old-fashioned road guides, which I love. I don't know if you've used a road guide before, but this is, what's the date on this? 1975. And I just want to give you a sense of the kind of detail that you can get from these guides. So here's driving the Yakima River Canyon, and he's showing you which layer in the German chocolate cake you're looking at, which is, for me, super satisfying. I love that level of detail. You know, before computers, you just take an old photo and then you kind of hand draw which units are on it. Oh yeah. So people are nice in the valley here. So people are dropping stuff off all the time in the backyard. They watch the live stream and they like to. So Bob said, hey, I got some stuff from the canyon. Can I drop it off in your alley in case you ever want to use it for one of those backyard thingies? I'm like, sure. So there's 8 of these out in the alley, back by the garage. And Bob, long ago, so he wanted to just get rid of them, I think, in his basement. Long ago was really into petrified wood and went up, when he was a young man, up on the walls of the Yakima Canyon. And there's incredible, huge logs and stumps. And in this case, he calls it bog. It's kind of a local name for kind of a mishmash of things. So it may look like I'm holding a piece of a tree, a piece of wood from somebody's wood pile, but this is petrified wood. It's not wood. Let's break off a little piece. If this is going to work or not. So I don't have the specialization. Did you see our petrified wood live stream? There's ways to identify the wood. Yeah, this isn't worth it. So there's all these huge stumps out there that are petrified logs, and Liz goes, what's up with that stuff out by the garage? I'm like, oh, Bob dropped those off. And I thought she'd say, get those out of here. She's like, oh, I could use those in my garden. So they may be here permanently. So thanks, Bob, for that. Okay, Cozy Fort time, and as a little summary to our discussion, something tells me I wanted to do one other major thing, but I'm not thinking of it right now, so I think we're good. Yeah, I think we're good. There's no Ice Age floods that ever got into the Yakima Canyon, so we can rule that out as a contributor. But I've got a serious quilt that my wife made for one of our kids when they were a baby. We don't have babies anymore, so I'm going to use it for our cozy fort tonight. Because I felt like I wasn't blocking out enough of the sun last time. And it seems like I talk about Tom Foster every night, and I easily could every night, but for reasons I've shared with you earlier, I'm kind of nostalgic about those days. This is one of the first ones that we made together, part of a 2-minute geology series that was Tom's brainchild. And where's the Bose thing? Oh yeah. So I tried the sound system thing last night. And
battery 100%.
Battery 100%.
MEC 102111.
Don't drop the Bose. Don't drop the laptop. Full screen. Volume cranked. Oh, we're in the cozy fort. What? Just you and me? And 665 other people? Oh boy. What the hell? We still got reflection? How's that possible? Sorry, Patrick. Oh, I gotta drop it back over there. Hang on. It gets so hot in here with you guys. All right, well, this is the best I can do tonight. It's like the old AMC Nash we used to have, and the roof used to fall in when we went over 40 miles an hour. Okay, hit it. The 2-minute geology. Hello, young people. Entrenched meander. This is the Yakima River just south of Ellensburg, Washington. Meanders are a feature of old age, these sweeping curves of the river. As rivers age, they develop more and more exaggerated meanders. We know this by flying over the Mississippi River system. And we see all stages of meander development back there. Eventually, the meander becomes so exaggerated that curve is abandoned and an oxbow lake is formed. Closed caption. And the channel becomes straight again. We can only develop these curves when an area is flat, like back east at the Mississippi. And here we've got these exaggerated curves as well, which means central Washington used to be flat. But there's a twist. This place isn't flat anymore. This is a deep canyon system. So to understand that twist, how about we get up on that rim and get a big picture view of the Yakima River Canyon. Let's go up there. High up above the Yakima River, on the rim of the canyon looking down, there's one of our meanders. We know about meanders. The meanders got established when the area was flat, a subtle curve becoming a more exaggerated curve. But then we froze the position of this meander and we entrenched it. Entrenched meanders tell us that the land is lifting against the river. The river wasn't up here and was cut down. We're sure that the river has been down there for millions of years, and the land has been lifting against the meander, against the river. The river's been cutting, matching an uplift rate of the bedrock, basalt layer after basalt layer, exposing themselves on the way up. The future of this meander is not more exaggerated meander, development of an oxbow lake. Instead, the future of this curve is more cutting, because the uplift continues here in central Washington. Entrenched meanders, just south of Ellensburg, Washington. It's all out here to see. Coulees, rocks, and canyons is scenery. Right here for you and me. 2-minute geology. Okay, I think it's time for questions. Thanks for your patience.
2-minute
Oh,
geology.
stop it. Auto, what?
2-minute geology.
Hello, young people. The Palouse River Canyon. Oh. All right, as usual, if you're new to us, please type your questions in uppercase. I'll try to answer as many as I can. It's 6:47 p.m. I'm thinking 10 or 15 minutes of the questions, and then we will take a little walk if you're wanting to do that. Oh, Lord. I'm scrolling back. If the river is older, how did the basalt get to the west side of the river? Maybe I didn't explain that very well, Merle. Yeah, I didn't explain that very well. Thanks for the question. I'll do it verbally. We did a live stream on ancient rivers, and we made the point that each time we had a giant, I'll do it. That each time we had a giant eruption from one of these fissures, we sent a big giant lava flow this way. And then there were thousands of years of quiet before the next eruption. So we had a river, and then the river got pushed or stopped, formed into a lake, something else, and then the river kind of established itself again. And then another lava flow. We're making the German chocolate cake now, 16 million years ago. So in other words, you continue this process of lava flow, making a perfect billiard tabletop, and then the river gets established again. Another one, another one. And so the ridges didn't start growing until we started squeezing the German chocolate cake, and the river, which happened to be flowing on the top part of the German chocolate cake, then started to cut. You're right, I didn't explain that very well before. Do you kind of have it now? That those lava, anytime you go to a river canyon, I don't care what river canyon it is, and anywhere in the world, take your favorite river canyon. There's two walls to the river canyon. They match, right? Have you ever thought of that? Let's say it's brown, green, brown, brown, green, brown. Those layers used to be continuous. Brown layer, green layer, brown layer, and then the river came through and cut it all out. So if you're still a little bit confused, let me say it this way. No, that's not going to... we need to make the German chocolate cake while the Yakima River is getting screwed up and moved around. But then the river is getting its meanders set on top of the German chocolate cake, and then we start lifting the cake to make the ridges and to make the canyon. That was a self-satisfied nod to myself. What a douche. If the Pacific Plate is moving northwest along the San Andreas Fault and continental California is moving southeast, how is there a northeast movement heading into Washington from Northern California? Chris, thanks for the question. It's confusing when you look at maps of the San Andreas Fault. Because when geologists put arrows directly on the San Andreas Fault, which isn't even on this thing, it's showing relative motion. It's just showing the west side of the San Andreas Fault moving north compared to the other side. They're not really saying that the North American side of the San Andreas Fault in California is moving to the southeast, even though there's an arrow going to the southeast. Is this making sense to you? So those are relative motions. So the main point is let's ignore the relative motions and talk about the true motions. And these are annual movements in millimeters. I misspoke and said centimeters. You guys are really nice in the comments, by the way. You know that this is live, and occasionally I do slip up verbally, And, if this was a different group, you'd go, oh, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He said centimeters and millimeters. That guy's a fraud. It's live. So you just corrected me kind of in real time, and that was fine. We did another one was an ash bed down at the Bridge of the Gods. I had the thing backwards in my mind, and I said it wrong. So thanks for that. Thanks for your general good vibe in the comments. So my point is, we have these real motions of the crust, and it's all heading our way. And I would basically ignore the relative arrows on the San Andreas to help you see that. How is the compression due to northward rotation accommodated along the axis of the Cascades? Bill, accommodated along the axis of the Cascades. Well, maybe I was misleading there. The rotation is happening all through the region, including the Cascades and including, remember the Seattle Fault a couple nights ago? That was from clockwise squeezing as well. So we're out of the basalts. We don't have the beautiful folds, but we do have plenty of reverse faults. These, it's almost like I could put some reverse faults in here as well. So if you caught that bottom sketch, there's a thrust fault kind of on the north side of each of these ridges. And even though we don't continue the folds through the Cascades, we do continue the reverse faults through the Cascades, and they link up with the reverse faults in Western Washington, which is alarming because, many of us over here in Eastern Washington think, oh, those poor bastards over there, they got all those earthquakes to worry about. And you go, well, hold it, wait a minute. The Seattle Fault kind of continues through the Cascades and hooks up with that base of that Menashtash Ridge right over there. Damn. And then you don't lose too much sleep because you realize, well, wait a minute. The clockwise rotation blocks are moving fastest around the outside, and they're not moving very fast towards the kind of the fulcrum or the middle part of this rotation. So you can feel a little bit better about seismic risk in general when you realize that the millimeters of annual motion closer to Pendleton, Oregon are less. And you would assume then the compression is less, but those are some basic assumptions. Why is the Rosa flow your favorite? Tune in on Saturday when we talk about the columnar basalt. Is there any evidence of an ancient oxbow lake in the ridges? Good question. No, the uplift was too fast. So I don't think I see what you're saying. No, because if we ever did have oxbow lakes on the top of the German chocolate cake, there's been so much uplift that's been crumbled away. By the way, there's some of the best Mima mounds I've ever found on top of Menashtash Ridge. So I don't know if we'll ever do one of these on Mima mounds or Mima mounds, however you pronounce it, but most people love the idea about related to glaciers, but there's never been any glaciation in the Yakima Folds. That's why nobody's come up with one kind of smoking gun for all these Mima mounds. They're in so many different areas. But let's not go there tonight. I can whisper right now. It's so calm. I don't hear anything except the sound of my voice, which is the way that I like it, because I love myself deeply, deeply, deeply. Is there a crater in the middle of the canyon, or is it part of the meander? It's part of the meander. That one's in the top 10 of local questions. People come into my office, say, I want to ask a question about the Yakima Canyon. I'm like, okay. They go, just south of Umtanum, the footbridge? Oh, yeah. So when did that asteroid hit? I'm like, where are you talking? Oh, just south of the footbridge. The meteor crater. And then I'm faced with a choice. Do I play along and say that's a meteor crater and then I give them some phony number, or do I actually have some credibility and say, sir or madam, I'm afraid there's no evidence of that being an impact crater. That's an old meander scar, and the Yakima River has left that location. It's a problem because they're sure it's a meteor impact, and they're not going to listen to anybody who says otherwise. Then it gets awkward in a hurry. Woe is me. Were you the one playing guitar, Daniel? Yes, I was. It should have been tuned a little better. How old is the lava at the bottom of the meander? Pomona? So each of the layers exposed in the Yakima River Canyon have a name. And it's tempting to go, oh, well, we must have 300 of the German chocolate cake layers exposed in the canyon. No, just a small portion of the entire cake is exposed. Even though it's a big canyon, we're not seeing all the layers. But as you can see here, if you're in one of the, have you ever noticed, do you know those that have driven the canyon or bicycled the canyon or run the marathon through the canyon, have you noticed the canyon is narrow and the walls are steep, and then it kind of, you go a little further and it opens up and it's broad and it's hardly a canyon at all, like at Eaton's Ranch, and then you go further and then it gets tight and narrow again? Well, there's a reason for that. You're going through where the river is carving through a ridge, an anticline, or through a syncline where it's broad and open. So to answer your question, was it the oldest? Yes. All these layers are roughly between 16 million years old and about 12 million years old. And you've heard of the Pomona lava, which is the youngest layer exposed, mostly on the Yakima side, near the Pomona Tavern. But some of the Grand Ronde lavas, that was in Newell's guidebook, are exposed in the core of the ridges. A few more. Why did the river turn south at Ellensburg? Susan asks. Well, it was flat. There must have been some local reason that the river decided to kind of work its way south and meander impressively there. Makes me wonder, were there crazy meanders all through the Yakima system when the area was flat? And then the crazy meanders were fossilized in the canyon, but maybe there were crazy meanders that have been destroyed because it's still not a canyon upstream of Ellensburg? Never thought of that. I don't know the answer. Are there other meandering rivers in Washington? Yes, Astra, one of my favorite meandering canyons, in other words, an entrenched system with the uplift, is the Grand Ronde River. And you're like, well, that's in Oregon, that's not in Washington. Well, if you go to extreme southeastern Washington, I mean extreme, like way, way down there in the southeastern corner of Washington, basically go to Clarkston, Washington, and head south towards Asotin, and you'll see some fantastic similar entrenched meanders. And those layers are truly the oldest of all the German chocolate cakes, so they look different. They're thinner lavas. Why does the squeezing produce folding here but produce cracks when we talk about it, when we talk about the flood basalt? Well, it's a good question. I don't know if we have time to really get into it. But to most audiences, I just say, well, these cracks formed 16 million years ago, and they formed in that pattern. But it actually turns out that there's good evidence now that the orientation of these fractures is far older than these lavas. That the lavas have happened to come out of fractures in that orientation, but the fractures go back 30, 40 million years, based on the orientation of the oceanic plains kind of obliquely colliding with us. So that explains those orientations. And to explain the fold orientations, which were kind of northwest, southeast, that's all due to how the clockwise rotation is operating. You can think of a very thin rug in your mother's kitchen on linoleum. And that thin rug, I can picture one in my grandma's house, for instance, back in 1969. And you got it, really thin kind of rug on the linoleum, and then you just put your foot and drag your foot, and you're going to fold up that rug as it slides on the linoleum. It's kind of the way we view these basalts. How old is the amphitheater Meander? That's where a lot of people think the impact was. I don't really know when that river channel decided to leave the base of that amphitheater and move out to its present location. I don't know how we would figure that out. There's a lot of landslides in the Yakima Canyon, and once you develop a view for landslides, you see them everywhere. I don't know how to describe it without going down there with you. Let's take the, whatever that's called, I don't even know what it's called. Let's take the Steadicam down there. Those frogs do not have names. They were painted by our 3 boys when they were in grade school, and their mother and them made those. That's all the information I have on the frogs. Muffler boy. Okay, it is a little bit after 7 o'clock. I'm going to scroll back one more time. I'm going to take this walk with you if you're feeling like you want to join. But there's a 50-50 chance it'll work. I think I've addressed most of these. I'm sorry if I'm not seeing your question, especially if you're a young person. Daniel, age 12. How deep, how long is the Yakima River, and what rock can be found in the Yakima River? That's what we'll finish with, Daniel. The length of the Yakima River is probably 70 miles long. And how deep is it? Well, in the Yakima River Canyon, the river is 1,000 feet below the top of the ridge, all the way down to the river. So in that cozy fort, it looked like I was climbing all the way up from the river to the top. But we filmed down by the river, and then we drove all the way around, got up to the ridge, and had to hike with the camera and everything for, I don't know, half an hour to get to that viewpoint. And what kind of rocks can be found in the Yakima River? That's maybe the most interesting part of your question, Daniel, age 12. Because the Yakima River is bringing a lot of rocks from the Cascades. So a lot of the rocks that are in the Yakima River are not German chocolate cake. They're not basalt, because the river is bringing all these Easter eggs from upstream. And so that's why going to the Yakima River is a fun place. You let your dog run around, you pick up rocks, and I don't know if you've ever noticed, Daniel, but there are all different kinds of rocks in most rivers, especially out here in the West, because every river, if you go upstream, has a bunch of smaller rivers feeding into it, and then each of those smaller rivers has smaller streams, and each of those smaller streams has smaller creeks, and they're bringing in rocks from all those different kinds of rocks. And from last night's episode, we learned that even at Snoqualmie Pass, we had so many different kinds of rocks making up the cliffs that you can get a really good rock collection going and still have a well-balanced social life at the same time. It's possible to collect things and still be an accessible, living, breathing human being. Okay, thank you for the questions. It's 7:05 p.m. I'm going to do a lot of talking to a toast to you if you want to go. And then after the toast, if you want to stick around, we'll try to take a walk with my new gizmo, but no promises. I'm not going to see you tomorrow night. Tomorrow night is Friday night. I will not see you. I will see you Saturday morning if you choose. 9 o'clock Washington time in the morning. Saturday, 9 o'clock Washington time in the morning, talking about columnar basalt and plate tectonics. Here's to you and your health. I hope that you're feeling strong. Muffler boy. I hope that you're not feeling any effects of this virus going around the world physically. I hope that you're not feeling major effects mentally from this virus going around the world. We're on week whatever of being at home, and it's a struggle for many of us, but we're doing the best we can. And we have these little meetings to help us get through. So here's to you. Amen. Thanks for joining us tonight. We'll see you tomorrow night. I love you. Good night. Hey, everybody, you're still with us. So, pressure's off, right? I've already said I'm not promising this will work. So, he thinks he's not going to take it out of that until I get my gizmo. And now I'm taking you out. I'm going to swipe you away, but try to keep the live stream going. And I'm going to switch over to data. Okay, you still there? Now, do I put this in this cradle now? You're still here, good. I'm going to try not to swear. That's my goal. I'm prone to bad swear words in these situations. I don't know why. Do I have to balance this each time? Screw it, we're just going to hit turn it on. Okay. Oh, wait now, why? You're looking at me, right? You're not looking out the... Okay, first things first. So, am I live streaming right now, number one? You're looking at me, you can see me, you can hear me okay. I'm on data, I think. I'm away from the house. Okay, so I'm gonna reverse the camera and see if you can still hear me. Okay, now you're looking out the back of my camera. Can you hear me? And can you see? Yes, that's Meanders Ridge. And I can, oh, damn, nice. Okay, so you're looking at a beautiful empty lot that's full of weeds. There used to be a beautiful old hospital building. It was on the National Historic Register. And the douche that lives in that beige house on the left bought the property and leveled it. So now we have a weedy lot to look at. Thank you much, jackass. All right. But the only good thing about that, sorry, Patrick, sorry, Evelyn. The only good thing is we can see Meanders Ridge. And just to the right of the douche's house, can you see a little cut? In fact, I'll give you a different view in just a second. I'm moving now. Am I still kind of not too shaky? Now, what if I do this? See, there's our little studio. Actually, is this backwards? Is that text backwards or forwards? Oh, good. Oh, I'm really excited. This is actually working. All right. Well, I want to do two things with the walk. Number one, I want to show you another view of the Yakima Canyon since that was our topic tonight. Hey there, Don Schleishman. With kind of a disappointed look on his face, like I can't believe he's like the 20-year-olds with a talking into a phone. So there's some wires, but I'm going to stand in the middle of poplar here. It's not a bad view. Now, I'm going to try to zoom, and I think it's going to be a crazy zoom, so prepare yourself. Wait, why am I going that way? There. Okay, this is going to be a wild zoom because I don't know how to do it smoothly. Ready? Shit, am I not zooming at all? Oh. Why can't I zoom? Do I have to hit M a little bit? Well, I don't want to push my luck. I was zooming like crazy this morning, but I can't do the wide thing right now. Don't understand. Always something to learn. Look at sagebrush. Oh, did you want to see our flowers? See, it's a nice place to walk. Oh, so this phone has like a mind of its own, like it wants to track on stuff. Interesting. All right, well, let's go up and enjoy our view. We got a family of young boys. Maybe they'll beat me up. Boy, everything's kind of backwards the way I want it with these controls. Sorry about that. Gonna have to take practice. I got to find the name of the guy who suggested this, so I want to thank you, No Name Guy, for sending me the link to do this. I'm very pleased. Oh my goodness, is that a geologist? Hey now, I got to warn you, I'm live right now, and it's your call. I'll keep a safe distance. You can say hi to these guys if you want. Yakima Canyon was the topic tonight, and I just got this special thing in the mail. So this is Ann Egger. Hi. She's a geologist and lives a few blocks away, and we play guitar 2 days a week. You'll be over at the house tomorrow. What are we having? You going to get some takeout tomorrow, you think?
I am, and I'm going to work on some Sheryl Crow and maybe some other stuff. We'll see.
Good.
We'll see what we got.
Well, good. Well, you can stick around if you want, but we're gonna look at a couple things we were talking about in the last couple live streams. Oh wait, but I can't zoom. So these guys are. Why can't I zoom, man? I want to zoom into the Mount Stewart thing.
The crane's kind of.
Oh yeah.
Scenery.
It sure is, isn't it? Well. I'm sorry, I don't know how to zoom. I was zooming this morning. I'm not recording, I'm just live streaming. That's interesting. What happens? Well, let me point out a couple things and then I'll experiment with you. So we still have, 600 people? Okay. So that, you see the size of that ridge north of town? You're overlooking the fairgrounds. There's even some snow. I don't know if you can see it. That's Mission Ridge, that's a ski place. So Wenatchee, Washington, and home of Jason, the wonderful photographers on the other side of that ridge. And that's the Wenatchee Mountains that we had on the chalkboard. And maybe I can figure out how to zoom, but right now I can't. And so the Ellensburg Blue Agate Field we talked about is the base of Stewart. And can you see the diagonal kind of pyramid-shaped peak on the horizon, even though I can't zoom right now? That's Mount Stewart, baby. I should speak Spanish right now. We're looking at Mount Stewart, but El Norte. Okay, great. And then there's an orb in the sky. And to the left of the orb is Rainier. See the very tip of Rainier, but we can't see it tonight.
Oh, maybe.
You think so?
Maybe. Teeny tiny little sliver.
There's a geologist that thinks she sees the very top of Rainier, and I believe her. I believe her. So this would be a good place to stand when we have Rainier sending a bunch of ashfall our way. Okay, thanks for joining us tonight. I'm going to visit with Ann a little bit off camera. I know I don't do anything off camera, but I'm going to do that. But I'm going to hit record just to see if that gives me control of this Zoom, because it would be fun to zoom into Stuart for you. So if I lose you for some reason, thank you for joining us tonight, and I'll see you Saturday morning. Record. Boy, what else would it be? I hit. Ooh!
See? So this is connected to the phone.
It is.
More than just being.
It's a
passed through.
Bluetooth thing, yeah.
Oh, okay.
But this is the. Are you guys still here? Yeah, they're still here.
So do you when you zoom? Do you zoom on that, or do you zoom on the?
I can use. Oh, it's this trigger thing. It's all. It can zoom using this. I don't know how.
But now they're looking at the ground.
They're looking. They are looking at the ground. You're right.
Ooh.
And now they're not. Are you dizzy right now?
I would be.
Still can't zoom. What if I'm going to flip it around? Can I zoom now? No. Is anybody familiar with this thing? Jason, is that you, Jason? No. Why can't I use the wide T and W? I assume that's wide and something else. Oh, maybe, I guess so. How's it going? Well, I think I am connected using Bluetooth because I don't.
Look at all those comments. Wow.
I guess I'm gonna try one other thing. I did a 45-minute live stream like last week, like getting help because I was totally flummoxed. People are very generous, but I think this is. Yep. Okay, I'm gonna turn you around and you can say goodnight to Ellensburg here.
Beautiful night.
Beautiful night.
Enjoy.
Good night, everybody. Thanks very much. See you Saturday morning for some of you.
Well, that's fun.
Still live streaming.